Scotland has some of the most iconic football stadiums in the world. But let's be real, some of them should have been bulldozed years ago. Crumbling stands, tiny capacities, outdated facilities, and terrible locations. Today, we're counting down 20 Scottish football stadiums that should be demolished. Let's get into it. 20. Ochilview Park, Stenhousemuir. Standing with a capacity of 3,746 seats, this stadium was built in 1890. Ochilview Park has been around for well over a century. While upgrades have been made, it still feels outdated. The main stand holds only 626 seats, while the rest of the stadium is mostly basic terracing. Stenhousemuir's modest crowds don't fill it, but a modern venue would be far more practical. 19. Central Park, Cowdenbeath. This is a football ground with a stock car racing track around it. Seriously, fans are miles away from the pitch, and the atmosphere suffers massively. The stadium is ancient, with outdated facilities and crumbling terraces. Cowdenbeath FC has called Central Park home for over a century, but in recent years, dwindling crowds and financial struggles have made it clear this place is well past its prime. 18. New Douglas Park, Hamilton Academical. New Douglas Park is uninspiring, to say the least. It's an all-seater stadium with a plastic pitch, which fans and players hate. The ground has low capacity and struggles to generate any real atmosphere. Built after Hamilton Academical's old Douglas Park was demolished, the new ground was supposed to be an upgrade. Instead, it feels soulless. 17. Excelsior Stadium, Airdrieonians. Excelsior Stadium lacks character, and with Airdrie's lower league status, it often feels empty. It's another example of a modern, soulless stadium that replaced a much-loved older ground, Broomfield Park. Built in the late 90s, this stadium replaced the historic Broomfield Park, which had real character. Unfortunately, the new ground never captured the same magic. Also, it has an artificial pitch that has drawn criticism. 16. Balmoor Stadium, Peterhead. Balmoor is exposed to some of the worst weather conditions in Scottish football. Strong winds and freezing temperatures make it an unpleasant experience for players and fans. Peterhead moved here in 1997, but despite the modern construction, it still lacks good facilities. Being one of the most northern stadiums in Scottish football, I am surprised that it has only 2 seated stands, with open terraces behind each goal. 15. Clifton Hill, Albion Rovers. Clifton Hill is one of the oldest stadiums in Scotland, and it shows. The main stand is falling apart, the terracing is crumbling, and the floodlights barely work. Once a proud home for Albion Rovers, today it's seen better days. With the club struggling, a new, smaller ground would make much more sense. In 2013, fans had to help repair the stadium to keep it open. 14. Bayview Stadium, East Fife. It's a one-stand stadium in a terrible location. Next to an industrial area, Bayview Stadium lacks charm, and with East Fife struggling for crowds, it often feels empty. Built to replace the old Bayview Park, it was supposed to be an improvement. Instead, it feels like a downgrade. The only stand has 1,900 seats, and the rest is just space. 13. Recreation Park, Alloa Athletic. Also known as the Indodrill Stadium, this is one of Scotland's oldest football grounds. And it shows. Most of the capacity comes from terracing, which is outdated and uncomfortable. The main stand is small, and the facilities are basic at best. The pitch is artificial, which is controversial. Surprisingly, some fans argue that it's practical for a small club. 12. Links Park, Montrose. Another ancient ground, another stadium in need of a wrecking ball. Links Park is home to Montrose FC, but it's far from a modern venue. While the capacity is nearly 5,000, the reality is that only a fraction of that can comfortably watch a game. The main stand is small, the terracing is outdated, and the facilities are limited. The stadium doesn't generate the kind of buzz fans expect. 11. Stair Park, Stranraer. Stair Park is one of the oldest stadiums still in use in Scotland. It has charm, but it's also struggling with low attendance and aging infrastructure. Stranraer FC, a club bouncing between League One and League Two, rarely fills the stadium. Therefore, for a club with limited resources, a new, compact stadium might be a better solution than maintaining this relic. 10. Station Park, Forfar Athletic. Forfar Athletic's home ground feels stuck in time. The grass pitch is fine, but the overall infrastructure is not. The terracing is basic, seating is limited, and facilities are poor. In an era where even lower league clubs are modernizing, Station Park feels left behind. With an average attendance of fewer than 1,000, a more practical, modern venue would be a game changer. 9. Forthbank Stadium, Stirling Albion. At just over 30 years old, Forthbank isn't ancient, but it's soulless. The design is uninspired, the atmosphere is weak, and despite being purpose-built, it lacks character. With average crowds of around 600, it feels empty most of the time. Many fans think Stirling Albion should consider a smaller, more intimate venue that enhances the matchday experience. 8. Palmerston Park, Queen of the South. This stadium has a great history, but it's showing its age. The main stand is dated, and the terracing, while nostalgic, doesn't suit modern football. It's still one of the biggest stadiums outside the Premiership, but it needs massive investment to meet modern standards. Without it, Queen of the South may struggle to attract fans and players. 7. Borough-Briggs, Elgin City. Notably, Borough-Briggs is famous for its grey, windy day, with its basic stands and limited covers. Borough-Briggs is one of the most remote stadiums in Scotland. Built in 1921, it lacks proper infrastructure. The stands are tiny, there's little protection from the elements, and the overall experience feels decades behind modern football. 6. Hampden Park, Scotland national team / Queen's Park. A packed Hampden on a Scotland match day is one of the best feelings for football fans. Hampden Park is the home of Scottish football, but let's be honest, the sightlines are terrible. The pitch is miles away from the stands, killing the atmosphere. Hampden has history, but it's outdated. Many fans think Scotland needs a modern national stadium. 5. Gayfield Park, Arbroath FC. Gayfield Park during stormy weather, with waves crashing behind the stands, makes a terrible football ground. Arbroath's home ground is next to the North Sea, making it the windiest football stadium in the UK. Built in 1880, it has character but little comfort. The cold, the wind, and the outdated facilities make it a tough place for fans. 4. Somerset Park, Ayr United. This is a true relic of Scottish football. It oozes history, but let's be honest, it's falling apart. Built in 1888, it has barely changed. The main stand is ancient, the terracing is crumbling, and the facilities are decades behind modern standards. Ayr United fans love its traditional feel, but the reality is clear, it's outdated. 3. New Dundas Park, Bonnyrigg Rose. Bonnyrigg Rose has done well to reach the SPFL, but their stadium hasn't kept up. New Dundas Park is a charming non-league venue, but it's simply not fit for professional football. The capacity of 2,200 is tiny, but the real issue is the lack of basic facilities. The pitch often struggles in poor weather, and the terracing is minimal. 2. Broadwood Stadium, formerly Clyde FC. Built in 1994, it was meant to bring Clyde into the modern era, but things never quite worked out. The stadium's location is a nightmare, isolated, miles away from Clyde's historical fan base in Glasgow. It never felt like home. The club struggled to attract crowds, and by 2022, Clyde abandoned Broadwood for New Douglas Park. 1. Glebe Park, Brechin City. This is famous for one thing, its hedge. Yes, the stadium has a literal hedge running along one side of the pitch. It's quirky, but let's be real, Glebe Park is completely outdated. With a capacity of just over 4,000, mostly terracing, it's far too small for any ambition beyond lower league football. The facilities are old, the infrastructure is basic, and the club has struggled since dropping out of the SPFL. Final thoughts. Scottish football has a rich history, but some stadiums have simply reached the end of their usefulness. Whether it's age, poor infrastructure, or a lack of long-term viability, these grounds need to go. New, modern stadiums could push them forward, attract new fans, and improve the matchday experience. So what do you think? Should these stadiums be demolished, or do they deserve saving? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more football content.